Yo, what's checking, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Orange Bloods Modcast. I'm Jeff. That's Anwar, Jason, Alex. We're all here for what turns into a season finale edition for the 2021 Longhorns. Do us a favor. Like the video, not because you like this season or you're paying attention to the game necessarily this weekend, but because you love how handsome Jason looks when he puts on that blue Adidas hat to go with that Black Rivals jacket. He just looks so sexy. Give us a like for Jason. Give us a subscription for Anwar. And you know what? Get the notifications for Alex. And if you're angry and you want to leave a message in the comments section for me, yell at me. That's fine. Fellas, it is a season finale. We are strangely at the week of Thanksgiving, and we pretty much know for certain that this is the last game. There's no bowl game to play for. Recruiting and team building for 2022 is on the brain. Anwar, I'll go to you first. What should we even talk about in the Modcast, right? Like, clearly we can't do a Kansas State preview. Is this a season recap? Is this I've been thinking about this all morning about what the angle is for this, because all season long there's a narrative of week to week to week. We're at the final week, and as you and I talked about earlier this week, I'm not so sure they shouldn't just play a bunch of kids and treat this thing as a spring game, even though I'm sure they'll do their normal approach and try to go all out to win it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Catch. To me, let your seniors go out and play in, the first half. You tell them, thank you, appreciate everything you've done. We're playing a bunch of young guys in the second half. And I know people want the practices and the 15 practices or whatever that you can have, but I think live game action, I don't think we need to worry about this team practicing any more than they need to at this point. And to what we talked about is, even if this team does practice, are we really going to believe anything from a practice report standpoint at this point? So for me, everything to me, Catch, it's not even about Kansas State or anymore. I think you and I are on the same page, but everything for me is about, the signing day class and what this looks like for the 2022. For me, everything's about 2022. It's not, I'm done with this season. I'm absolutely done. I have nothing else to say. I feel like there's no more, blood left in that turnip. Is that the correct term? Blood left in the turnip? I feel like I just made something up.
No, you're good.
Blood from a turnip, isn't it? I think that's
squeeze.
Right.
I don't know.
If
Ain't nothing else to talk
wrong,
about. How about that? I won't use any analogies. There's nothing else to talk about. So for me, everything's about 2022 and beyond, because I don't even want to recap this season. I feel like I'm in a good mood. We got the holidays coming up. I don't want to depress myself by talking about this season anymore.
Anwar, to that point, I was thinking of Jason yesterday, and usually in a week or two, Jason will hit us with the questions for like the recapping the season. It's like for easy content. So it's like wide receiver of the year, your favorite moment. It's like, let's not do that this year. Honestly, like we'd have to go back to either October or September for all of our positive memories. And I feel like everybody, Jason, would just yell at us this year if we do some sort of recap where we try to point out the positives. People have just tuned out at this point on 2021, and you just can't blame them.
No, well, to jump in, I do my weekly matchups every week, of course. I've been doing them for years, and I always call at least one, sometimes multiple, basically beat writers or reporters or contacts I know in that market. If they're playing Oklahoma, I'll call our guys from Sooner Scoop. And this week I hit up our Kansas State guy and say, hey, do you have time to talk? 10 minutes or so, blah, blah, blah. We've done it every year with this guy, Derek. And Derek's like, man, I'm super busy today. Can we do it like tomorrow afternoon? And I was like, you know what? Screw it. Don't even worry about it. Nobody really cares. I could pretty much write anything about this game. So, of course, I did the matchups and tried to do the best I could, but it's mostly based on, okay, I'm looking at stats, and I knew about Deuce Vaughn, of course, and their quarterback situation. Yeah, but it's, like I said before we started recording, I'm sure everybody on this recording and probably most people listening or watching, it'd be nice to just be able to fast forward till late Friday afternoon and kind of close the book on this season. And
I don't even
anybody.
get to do that. I'm gonna have to do I'm gonna do
Yeah, poor Alex. Yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
I'm
I was
gonna
going to say, Alex.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it just like I did it. I think in the 5 and 7 year, wherever I just put out the stats and I didn't even write a column with it. I just said, you guys don't even want to read anything.
Well, because you have to have those stats for your data purposes.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'd be like, hell, don't even worry about it.
Like, I'm not gonna write it. I mean, unless anything remarkable happens in that game, it's gonna be hard to think of anything to write about that. It's gonna get more than 500 page views, you know. So,
Alex, let me come to you because it's an interesting point in that you more than anybody else have 11 weeks of data that you've sorted through. If we're looking ahead to 2022, because I kind of did this exercise in my 10 thoughts from the weekend, right? I wanted to separate the remaining roster that's scheduled to come back into some sort of tiers of very good players and below average players. Based on your data, when you're looking ahead to next season, who are the non-obvious building blocks? I mean, if we eliminate Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington in the running back room, and I give you the rest of the roster based on your data, who is the 2022 Longhorns built around beyond who they go out and get in the portal?
So you only mentioned offensive players. So you're talking offensively, or are you talking
anybody on the team that isn't a running back or those two receivers?
All right. Well, on offense, I mean, I think he's had a little bit of a downslide these last couple of games, but clearly Junior Angalau he'll be the building block on the offensive line. Jordan Whittington will be the building block with the wide receivers. Jared Wiley will be the building block with the tight ends. And then do
you think Jared Wiley's played well this season?
I think he's played well.
Yeah, those aren't great building blocks. Even Junior, I mean, Junior Angle. If Jared
Shut
Wiley,
up, Jason. I'm not trying to get negative yet. I'm just asking him a question.
I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to go back on.
You mute yourself, okay? Who else, Alex?
The defense will be losing DeMarvion Overshown. The defense will be losing Anthony, even though there was that weird thing about the senior day, but he's going to take part in senior day activities, right?
So, well, and I asked John Bianco about it this week, and he was like, we won't know until we know. So yeah, don't look at what was in the press release as gospel at this point for any of those kids, one way or the other.
Anthony Cook will be gone. Who had a kind of bad game this last week?
Yeah,
under the radar bad game. Deshaun Jameson be gone.
Josh Thompson going to the Senior Bowl.
Josh Thompson's gone. Senior Bowl invite. That was really interesting, huh? That was an interesting thing. So I honestly think, man, I think the biggest building. I think Byron Murphy's a bigger building block on the defensive line than Keandre Coburn at this point. He's been just so good. He's had like 20 run stuffs. Is the quarterback pressure spot interior able to get me pulled up and see? It's just like comparatively to the rest of these guys, it's been so he's gotten 10 pressures this season. That's more quarterback pressures than like Obi and stuff. So, you know, he's been really good. Other than that, I mean, I think Jahdae Barron's been coming on just a little bit. So I would say that that would be who I would say.
Anwar, when we think, I think the scariest thing about the 2022 season right now for me is that, you know, for whatever we want to say about the disappointing nature of this senior class, there is I don't want to say a lot of talent. Maybe that's not the right way to frame it, but there's a lot of contributing players in that group all over the field. And it's hard to see where the better team comes from right now in 2022, unless they kill it in the portal. Like the decisions that Sark makes there will be critical, you would think, in the grand scheme of like where this program goes from here, because they've got to get better next season. But unless there's a lot of development that we haven't seen yet from a lot of the talent on the roster, this is a program that next year needs a real jolt of contributing talent to, you know, answer the question that I gave Alex, which was, of the core guys coming back, how many of those guys actually are good and can be difference makers? If they don't go out and get the difference makers in the portal, I struggle to really know what to even think about next year's team.
Well, yeah, and for me, it's I mean, he's kind of identified, Catch, that they got to get better on both fronts. Whether it's the offensive line and the defensive line, seems to be he understands like that ain't going to cut it, and the lack of a pass rush in this conference is not going to cut it. To your point, he's definitely. They got to kill it in the portal. The recruiting class, those guys that they have coming in, especially some of those defensive linemen, some of those guys may need to contribute right away. But the defense, for me, the offensive line, absolutely. Like you've got to go out and get some guys who can contribute right away. But you also got to do something with this defense. I mean, when you give up 50 plus to Kansas at home. That had an offense that was doing nothing pretty much all year long, and then someone comes alive with a third string quarterback in your house, you've got to improve this defense by hook or crook. So, for me, some of the guys that are gone, losses, absolutely. And they've got to find ways to get some other guys in, like I said, from portal, like that can come in and contribute right away. And they've got to be able to do a better job, Catch, of identifying those guys. The guys that they got in the portal didn't have a huge impact this season. We saw splashes of them, but we did, the Ben Davis game, you're like, well, what the hell? I mean, could he have done this all year long if given an opportunity? Like, I don't know, but you definitely need guys who have to have guys, Catch, that come in and have immediate, I'm just talking about immediate impact on defense, because, from 4 wins to 10 will be a hell of a jump. You've got to find a way to go from 4 to 5 to get up to like that, at least the 7-ish mark to 8-ish mark to show some sort of progress here. So I'm with you, like everything that they do from especially portal wise, again, the recruiting thing, it takes time for guys to develop. I mean, you've got to, he calls it free agency. Well, it's free agency for a reason. And free agency works both ways. And free agency means you lose guys to free agency, but also means gives you an opportunity to acquire guys. Not saying you got to go, Michigan State and get 20 plus, but damn, get a bunch of guys who can have an immediate impact.
But Jason, as you're saying that, I'm sitting here thinking, that's what they did last year. And this defense is what it is. I mean, they got guys at all 3 levels of the defense last year via the portal. And, like you said, you've seen flashes of productivity from those guys, but they're not game changers. They're not difference makers. I think they have to take a different tactic. I don't want to start, I don't want to sit here and throw individual guys under the bus. But if you're taking, I feel like last year what they did was they took highly ranked guys. They were highly ranked recruits. And they're like, okay, well, these guys have got to have some talent. Well, we've seen Texas have a roster full of highly ranked recruits that are pretty average talents. I'm almost of the thinking that they'd be better off taking guys that are plus players at smaller programs looking to make a jump up, like a Parker Braun did, like a Calvin Anderson. Those guys are more impact players than a guy that's leaving Alabama or Ohio State or buried on the depth chart at Notre Dame or Georgia or something. I mean, those guys are buried on the depth chart for a reason. I don't care if they were 5-star players coming out of high school. They have not been plus players, and that's why they're transferring. I do agree with you that Texas needs to throw strength in numbers at the transfer portal. I think we all would agree with that. And Sark's mentioned it at 33 players or whatever the number is going to be. But I'd like to see him go after guys, like I say, that were ultra productive, even if it's at a smaller school.
But the thing is, Jason, that's why I was saying they have to do a better job of identifying that talent, because they got Ray Richardson, who was extremely productive at New Mexico State. I mean, the numbers, you thought he comes in and has an instant impact. We barely saw his name called this year. That's why I said I'm with you. They just got to do a better job of identifying it.
Yeah, and I guess, it goes down to recruiting and everything else. You're right. I mean, just bottom line, they've got to do a better job of talent evaluation.
Well, Jason, you very organically, you literally just answered the question that I was going to ask you, because a year ago, at least initially, I think their thought was the worst players at Alabama will be good. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't matter that Ray Thornton wasn't good at LSU or that Ben Davis wasn't good at Alabama. They seem to view that those programs were such at levels that their trash could be someone else's treasure. And they're wrong. They just, there was a lot of question in real time about these guys have been on college campuses for 5 years each, and neither had really so much as made a play in 5 years. To expect that they would do that in Austin was a curious thing because it was a big gamble. And when we look at the importance that Ray Thornton has had on this season, Alex, I don't mean to bang on Ray Thornton, but somebody made an interesting point in your deep dive on the defense, which was, is Ray Thornton, like at this point, mathematically the worst player that you've ever evaluated at Texas? Because he's played almost in your metrics, he's playing at a sub replacement level, but he's played almost as much as anybody on the defense. I think he's like 15 snaps away from Overshown, and he's like at 472. And I think Overshown maybe 490, something like that. And yet his productivity is so low. He makes a play like once every 50 snaps. Is there anybody that is there a comparison in previous seasons, or is this the new bar moving forward?
Well, it can't be the new bar. Ray Thornton just hasn't been any good.
I know. Is there anybody that you've seen since you've been doing this? It's been.
He means low bar.
Right? Yeah, I mean, it's been a season-long starter and plays almost every snap, but has been this unproductive. Because if it was the offensive line, we would be able to go and look at your historical numbers and go, okay, well, here's where he ranks here. Is there any way to do that with the defense?
Yeah, I'll go. Let me pull it all up and I'll go through that and I'll tell you here. Give me like five minutes.
But Jason, the ultimate point that I'm making is that a year ago, we didn't think of it at the time as it's a critical decision, right? I think we would have treated the Ray Thornton decision the way we will this year. When we look at players they take, we're going to be like, how good can that guy be right away on a team that needs it? Because
hold on now. I told you when they were doing this last year, I was like, none of these things move the needle for me.
Well, most of them didn't. They shopped it. They shopped at Goodwill. I mean,
you weren't saying that last year. You
is
thought
that
these guys were program changers. We had this long argument last year on.
No, you don't believe that there's talent in the portal in general.
Not as much as you think. I don't think there's a reason these guys are transfers. Exactly.
Right. And Michigan State disagrees with you.
Well, yeah.
But nobody thought any of these Texas guys were program changers. Can't count Xavier Worthy, but literally Anwar and I spent the summer doing videos talking about what low bar we had. I think Anwar owes me a lunch because we had a 4-sack.
Oh my God,
for Ray Thornton.
I sure enough do.
But I'm sure I owe you a lunch, Anwar, for some bet that we haven't kept track of.
Alex and I should get the free lunch on that too, because you guys are piggybacking free lunch off of mine and Alex.
You got to be there.
You said, hey, first of all, I think Casey Thompson is good. And so therefore Alex wins that bet.
Oh, he does not.
Wait a second.
Alex wins the bet. He good.
Does not.
He's leading the Big 12 in touchdown passes thrown. That's good. Sorry.
You got benched last week.
That's good. It was just good and nothing past good.
That is not true.
It was good.
Even Alex knows that he's lost this bet.
No, I didn't. No, I kind of like Onwar's new.
Oh, come on!
Look at that shit-eating grin on Alex's face.
That's a whole other Modcast. I shouldn't even.
Fair enough. Yeah. But the point, Alex, Jason, the point that I wanted to make is that
we've gotten close. We've gotten close to Ray Thornton with 2017 Nashawn Hughes, but not close.
Oh, that just gave me chills.
Let me continue going.
Okay, Jason, I just think the bigger point is Texas competed in the portal last year worse than they did in recruiting. That when it came to the college kids, remember they were in on a Caleb Evans kid that went to Missouri. And there was the DB that went to Vanderbilt or wherever the hell he went. Like, I can't even remember all the guys at this point. But there were guys that they made plays for, and Texas, for whatever reason, wasn't being chosen. When you looked at like the Devin Richardsons of the world, I think Texas was his first offer. I don't know who was going after Ben Davis and Ray Thornton, but shame on them for doing so. They're going to have to win in the portal and have a better plan than they had a year ago. And I don't know. I'm curious internally how they view their approach making in this. Because I look back in retrospect and thought they did a pretty terrible job last year in the portal. Kind of thought that in real time. And this is the key to improving the 2022 team, is to get it right this year.
Well, if you take guys from the portal or even JUCO transfers, those guys you bring in because they're an immediate fix, right? It's not like recruiting, like Anwar said. Those guys can be 2-3 year development plans. So you cannot afford to miss on these portal takes.
They have to be starters.
They have to be starters, or at least contribute. Plus players. Otherwise, you might as well be playing your young guys and throw them to the wolves and let them develop on the fly. But you're right. And again, man, we don't want to sit here and just bash on all these guys they took individually, but I can't think of one of them that's been a consistent plus player, right, for Texas. Yeah. Obi's made some plays. Ben Davis,
he's solid.
Yeah, Dunn's been good when he's been out there. He's been okay, but none of them have been truly consistent difference makers for that defense. And you've got to find. You mentioned Michigan State. Well, yeah, they found some diamonds in the rough. You've got to find at least a couple of those guys that are true, consistent game changers week in and week out. And that comes down to good evaluations, and they certainly didn't hit their marks last year.
Well, Anwar, it's interesting because Mel Tucker has like an NFL background. And the thought process at Michigan State was that he used a little bit of that in treating the portal like free agency and having a scouting system in place to look for diamonds in the rough. And I think Jason said it about 10 minutes ago, but it really is an important point. They've got to be able to find some guys. It can't just be, who did we recruit at Alabama that, it can't be just guys they know that were failed players. It will really help them if they can find guys that have been successful elsewhere. But, I don't know how comfortable they are in digging in the Sam Houston States of the world, or going back to McNeese, which is where they got Darian Dunn. They probably don't do that if Tom Herman doesn't do that. That they really seem to be much more interested in guys that were coming from big time programs with big track records that just didn't pan out at those places. And I don't know that works.
No. And you look, I think it's easy to somehow underestimate the Big 12 and just think, it's the Big 12. Like, what is that? Like, we'll come in here and we can kick ass in this conference. And we have seen a third coach that has come in with all the accolades and stuff. And they're like, yeah, okay, we'll bring in these guys. This will be enough. We've got enough talent. And realize, holy shit, some of these teams are pretty actually good. Like, in some of these teams, if you ain't, or you're not ready, they will light up the scoreboard on your ass. And so you've got to find the guys who have the speed to cover in this conference, that have the speed, obviously, on the defensive line to get to the quarterback. Like, some of that stuff works in other conferences, but to get out of here, you probably have to have a different mindset, a different approach. And so, again, whatever they did before, they've got to say, we got to do better than that. It's easy to talk about it's just the players. Well, you got to bring in the players that are going to have the impact. So, okay, we've said you need players, you need better or talent. I won't say better, but talent that fits what you guys are trying to do. Well, then it's up to them to go out and find it and acquire it, because they didn't do it in year one, and they won't have the same luxury in year two. Like, year one is your get out of jail free card. You've used it in year one. Year two, you still can't be talking about developing. You still can't be. No Texas fans want to hear any of that. They've got to find a way to really. They've got to find a way to get enough talent to probably push this to about 9 wins or so regular in order to make Texas fans happy next year. That's just, it is what it is. If you
Anwar, can you imagine trying to tell a Texas fan in August, play this Modcast from late November to a Texas fan in August and tell them you got to try to get to 9 wins to make Texas fans happy. I mean, this is so wild that we're here. And I know we can't relitigate that, but every once in a while you just stop and you'll say an accurate, true statement, and it will blow my mind a little bit. And that was
first of all, when we get to August, whenever we do our preseason predictions, whenever Jason says 8 or 9, they're gonna be like, "You're an idiot." You know, Alex will put up 9. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, same thing. Like, everyone's going to shit on our predictions anyway, and they're going to convince themselves. You know, when you look at the schedule, you know,
God,
you know, Alabama's losing a couple of guys off their team over there. You know, UTSA. You know, and I, you know, we were really, really tough with Oklahoma if we just completed. You know. This is easily a 10-11 win team in my book. Like, that's where we'll be in August.
3 losses on one. That's what they'll say.
It happens. I've gotten used to it. You guys have lived it longer than me, but I know you get shouted down. So yes, that's what it'll be in August, but we have to remind ourselves what this team's coming from.
Okay. I'm going to change direction slightly. We're staying with portal talk, but I want to ask you guys a question.
Let me just tell you, Cash. So the two guys, do you guys remember Devontae Davis in 2016?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty ineffective. And then Nashawn Hughes in 2017. Neither quite as ineffective on a per snap basis as Ray Thornton.
Did they play as many snaps?
Yeah. Well, I'm only looking at guys who played a significant. Devontae Davis played 259 snaps, and then Nashawn Hughes that year played 423.
Oh my God. Okay, fair enough. He made me snort just then. But Ray Thornton played almost those two guys combined from a snap standpoint. Like, he's playing twice as many snaps as those two guys combined. And again, his effectiveness rate. I don't mean to bag on Ray Thornton, but when I notice something that stands out that I think might be of historical nature, I never ignore it.
You know what stands out to me too is that in 2017, I have Tope Amadi. Do you remember that he played defensive end?
Yes.
I've forgotten that. Okay.
Only a few snaps, right?
Yeah, 4. But
yeah.